What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today is the first time that we've got a chance to use our Kyurem Black and Kyurem White in Master League, which means I wanted to give them a go and see just how broken they're going to be. These Pokemon are obviously over 5,000 CP. They have busted movesets, so if you're not using it or trying to target them, then Master League is a little bit of a mess. Because of the ability of Metal to deal with the Ice-type Pokemon, as well as Palkia to deal with the Dragons, I wanted to give this team a go and see just how strong it could be. So let's get into the battles and see what this team can do. Alright, let's get into the first game of the day. Metal up against a Kyurem Black in the lead. This is a very neutral matchup, as much as you might expect the Steel type to beat the Ice type Pokemon here, just because the Kyurem Black does generally run Shadow Claw and Fusion Bolt, which is a very neutral and very offensive threat here. In comes Double Iron Bash. You can see it does not two-shot. If we could get a two-shot, it'd be so much better against this Pokemon, but because Double Iron Bash is a little bit of a less efficient move, it's not quite enough here. In comes a Fusion Bolt. It does a ton of our health. I have a superpower, which even though it is non-stab, it will do just a bit more raw damage here. We can throw this move, try to farm down with either our Palkia or our Kyurem. We swap into Palkia. Let's see what our opponent's going to do. In comes a Xerneas, a Pokemon, which is a very good answer to Dragon-type Pokemon, but we have baited this out, which means that we don't have to deal with it quite as much with our Kyurem, and our Metal does have Double Iron Bash if we need to neutralize this later on. We also know that Xerneas generally only has charge move pressure, right? These Geomancies, despite being super effective fairy-type damage, are doing very little damage to us. We can shield up a Moonblast here, try to go for an Aqua Tail in just a second, and see if we can get a shield back from this thing. At this point, I want to make sure this Pokemon is not going to be a big threat for our Kyurem in the backline. Aqua Tail does get a shield, and our opponent is not quite at the next move before we can get a third Aqua Tail. Because we get this move off, we can either get another shield or put them into a very low health range, where either the Thun Shocks from my Metal or potentially Ice Fangs from our Kyurem should be enough to knock them out. Moonblast does knock out Palkia here. I think at this point, though, I can farm down with Kyurem and try to sweep this endgame. Very tricky matchup, though, here in the back. It's going to be a Necrozma, a Pokemon which they do resist our Ice-type damage with their Steel typing. I'm going to try to catch a move on our Metal. We don't quite get it, but what we do have is the ability to go for Fusion Flare against this with our Kyurem. Because we were able to make them drain energy against our Metal, I think at this point I can go for a Fusion Flare, try our best to knock this thing out, and we saw that they threw a Dark Pulse, likely meaning they're running Dark Pulse and Sunsteel Strike. If that is the moveset of choice for our opponent right now, that means they will not be able to get to an Iron Head or something like that against us before we can reach this next Fusion Flare against them and potentially one-shot them. We reach the charge move, no catch ends up happening, and now as long as we can Ice Fang down that Xerneas before they get to another charge attack, we should be able to win this game. Two Ice Fangs later, Xerneas goes down, Kyurem White putting in a nice little sweep there in the endgame. Alright, next matchup, a fantastic lead for Metal. We obviously resist all the fairy, all the grass-type damage they could possibly have here, and they save swap a Kyurem, a Pokemon which by no means wants to take a superpower from a Metal. We saw the last game, it does about half of their health here. In comes the superpower. Opponent does not expect it, and they take so much damage on this Kyurem. Because we got all this damage against them, I'm going to swap in our Palkia, try to farm them down after shielding once, and see what our opponent's going to do. They do go for a free shock here, which would have done a ton of damage. I don't know if it would have knocked us out quite yet from that range. Honestly, maybe I should have no-shielded that, because I think I could have knocked them out just with fast food pressure without being knocked out myself and not have to go down a shield, because now we are down a shield against a Florges, which is a little bit tricky. In comes another Aqua Tail. Our opponent could shield this up if they want to keep some health here, but they know there's a Metal in the backline that they really don't want to be aligned into, and they opt to let that go. In comes a charge move, could be a Trailblaze, Disarming Voice, maybe a Moonblast. It really depends on what moveset they want to run and how much they want to overfarm. It is a Moonblast, which does take us out here. Metal can come back in, drain all of the energy from this Pokemon, and then potentially, I'm hoping at this point, our Kyurem in the backline should be in a good spot. We see a Rhyperior, which is a decent matchup for us, but if they get a Beta against us here, that could be catastrophic. I'm going to call this, see if it's a Breaking Swipe, which it is, and then farm them all the way down. Ice Fang is just way too powerful. They will not get to 3 more moves, or 2 more moves rather, against our Kyurem, and we can take the win in that game. Next matchup, going to see a Kyurem White on the opposing side, a much better lead than that Kyurem Black we saw earlier, but then they say swap a Pokemon, which is a little bit tricky here for our team. Necrozma is a Pokemon I don't have a hard answer for, so I'm going to go for a Superpower Chip and Dip and swap into our Palkia. At this point, I don't know what their moveset is going to be. It could be an Outrage, and if they do have Outrage, obviously, that would basically one-shot us here. I'm going to shield up and see what they're going to throw. Sunsteel Strike being thrown, which is a very interesting opportunity for us here to overfarm just a little bit more energy, knowing that they likely have Dark Pulse and Sunsteel Strike. If they end up shielding, I can no-shield the Dark Pulse, and since they no-shield, that means now I have a lot of energy on Palkia, which unfortunately for us is going to be thrown into a Primarina. We know their full team at this point, right? They have that Kyurem, they have this Primarina. Our Metal has a lot of work to do because I don't think our own Kyurem is going to have as much play as I would like it to. With that said, we get to a second Aqua Tail, which should do quite a bit of damage to this Primarina here. It should at least put them into a double Iron Bash range, which is going to make our life just a little bit easier to close out this endgame. In comes a charge move here, likely going to be a Hydro Cannon, which will do a decent chunk of damage to us, but since I know they have very heavy hitting charge moves on that Kyurem, I cannot shield this move up. In comes our first double Iron Bash against this Primarina. Our opponent could shield this up if they want to keep this alive, but I'm thinking at this point they might just invest everything into their Kyurem. In comes that Kyurem White, and at this point, if they ever let a charge move go, our own Kyurem should be able to close out this endgame. In comes a double Iron Bash. Our opponent does opt to shield it up here, and now in comes our own Kyurem. This is going to be an interesting endgame. I know that Ice Fang is a very slow energy generation move, so I can go for a Fusion Flare here, try to trip them down with our Ice Fang damage, force them to throw a second Fusion Flare against our Kyurem after shielding up this move, and we should be able to Ice Fang them down into a range where I can knock them out with a single double Iron Bash. In comes the Fusion Flare. We do shield it up properly here. Our opponent is going to be forced to throw before I get my next attack, which they are going to do right now. Fusion Flare will knock us out, but now they have been chipped down so much, I think one double Iron Bash will be more than enough to win us this game, and our opponent, realizing they're not going to reach another move, they end up top lefting. All right, next matchup, a Kyurem Black. Once again, so many Kyurems in this current Master League meta. We're going to go for a bit of a chip damage with either double Iron Bash or maybe Superpower. We saw the last time we were in this matchup that one double Iron Bash plus one Superpower is not quite enough damage here to knock them out, but it did put them into a nice Dragon Breath down range for our Palkia. In comes double Iron Bash. Our opponent overfarming so much energy here. I go for the Superpower. Do they shield, or are they just going to let this go? In comes the shield, so now I'm going to swap out after debuffing myself and see what they want to do. In comes a Dialga. This Pokemon is such a tricky Pokemon to deal with a Palkia, but because we do have access to Spatial Rend, we can go and either guarantee a shield or put them very low if they opt to let us through. Spatial Rend comes through, our opponent does shield it up, so now we have 2 shields to 0, which when you have a Kyurem in the backline is a fantastic thing to see. In comes a Thunder, maybe a Roar of Time against us. Let's see what they're going to throw. It is a Thunder, it looks like, so it does do just a bit more raw damage than it would have otherwise if they had Iron Head or Roar of Time against us, but because we can outpace them here to the next charge move, this Superpower should knock them out, and now 2 shield Kyurem is going to have a lot of work to do. With that said, though, they come back in with their own Kyurem, which is a Pokemon which does not want to see a Superpower, but they make a fantastic catch here on a Fairy-type Pokemon in the backline. Superpower does do almost no damage to them here, so because they have a lot of energy on that Kyurem, and this Zacian is going to be able to go for super effective charge attacks, it's going to be a little bit scary, but they misplayed just a little bit here. They wanted to build up to back-to-back charge moves, but by doing that, I can reach the Fusion Flare and knock them out here, and now all I have to do is double shield my Kyurem, either Ice Fang down or reach a Fusion Flare to get the knockout this game. Freeze Shot gets shielded up. That's a lot of energy down the drain for our opponent, and now I can just shield up the second time, go for another attack here with our Kyurem, and we should be able to close out this endgame. Freeze Shock does get shielded up. We have the Fusion Flare ready to go. Our opponent at this point has nowhere to hide. They don't have much HP, but this Fusion Flare should easily knock them out and take the win in this game. All right, next matchup, we're going to see Melmetal up against a Palkia. This is another kind of tricky matchup here for our team to deal with, but I do know that we have neutral fast attack damage, we have neutral charge attack damage with superpower as well, so the way that we want to deal with this is just kind of going for chips with our Melmetal. Maybe if I debuff myself too much, I can swap into my own Palkia and just make it so it's not quite as tricky of a Pokemon across the board. In comes a superpower. Our opponent could shield this up, but I would expect to see a no shield, knowing that none of Melmetal's moves are going to do all that much damage. In comes superpower number 2. This is going to do quite a bit of damage if it goes through. Our opponent might shield this up, but they do opt to let it go, and in comes our Palkia, which they don't get to another charge move against our own, which is very good for us to see. For some reason, they come in with a Kyurem to try to farm us down. That is not an answer to a Palkia, so I'm going to shield this up and try to overfarm as much energy as I can. Likely going to be a Fusion Bolt here. They threw the cheaper move, which would have done quite a bit of damage to us despite being non-stab. I now have almost double Aqua Tail. I'm going to throw one. If they no shield, then I can probably farm down. If they shield, then I'm very close to the next one here, so I can throw the second move. And if they no shield this once again, I think I can farm down before the next charge move. Aqua Tail comes through. It doesn't knock out quite yet, but 1 or 2 more Dragon Breaths is all it takes to knock out this Kyurem. And unfortunately for our opponent, this Shadow Ho in the backline wants nothing to do with our Water and Dragon-type Pokemon. Next matchup, Melmetal up against a Meloetta. Very interesting Pokemon here, right? They got the recent buffs here to both Psyshock and Dazzling Gleam, a very inaccessible Pokemon at that, but our Melmetal does technically resist all of the damage that they're going to throw. With that said, we have very inefficient charge moves to throw against them with Double Iron Bash, and Thunder Shock is non-stab, so honestly, while this matchup is good for Melmetal, it's not as good as you might expect it to be. In comes a charge move, likely going to be a Psyshock against us here, which does a decent chunk of damage to us, but another Double Iron Bash has been reached, and our opponent is likely going to let us go. In comes the charge move. We can get them to get knocked out here in another like 2 charge moves, but it's going to take so long to reach. Our opponent ends up swapping out to a Kyurem. This Kyurem Black is not going to want to take the superpower, but we'll see what they end up doing. They let it go, which is such an interesting play here. Now we can just come in with our Palkia, go for a 1 shield farm down, and potentially go for a lot of charge attacks against whatever they have in the backline. In comes a Freeze Shock, and it is going to get an attack drop against us here. It's so crazy that these very powerful moves also have potential debuff chances. I don't even know why they have them here. didn't even realize the first time that I ended up fighting a Kyurem that they could possibly do that to me, but because of that attack drop, I know an Aqua Tail is not going to be enough to knock them out here. I'm going to shield up this Side Shock over farm just a little bit and go for a full-on Spatial Rend. They might try to expect a bait here with an Aqua Tail. They might try to survive the move, but if they do, then it's going to be 3 Pokemon against 1 in the backline, and unfortunately for them, it is a Landorus. This Pokemon wants nothing to do with these Ice Fangs. They end up realizing not much those shields can do for them there. All right, next game, what are we going to see? It is an Enamorus in the lead. This Pokemon is such a tricky Pokemon for a lot of the teams I've used in the past, but because Melmetal is a very powerful answer to it, as well as honestly, Kyurem's pretty good into it too with super effective Ice Fang. For once in my life, I'm not all that scared of that Pokemon. We go for a superpower chip and dip into our own Palkia. Let's see what our opponent's going to throw. Likely going to be a Spatial Rend. I'm going to shield it up just in case, and because it is that Spatial Rend, now I think I might be able to get a full farm down against them to potentially come out of this matchup with a ton of energy for that Enamorus. That's just an Aqua Tail. I know our Water and Dragon type Pokemon is going to take very little damage from this. I can no shield, go for that full farm down, and then throw some charge moves against whatever is going to come in. Oh, we do have a Spatial Rend. It would do almost nothing to this Fairy-type Pokemon, so I'm going to try to get 2 Aqua Tails. I know 1 Aqua Tail will still do quite a bit of damage to an Enamorus here, so I can go either into our Melmetal to drain energy, or if I wanted to be a little bit more bold and call that they're going to swap out, I could have come in with Kyurem there, but our opponent, unfortunately for them, has another Ice weakness in the backline. The only way I lose this game is if our Kyurem goes down before they're in double Iron Bash range, so I can shield this up no matter what move it is, and we're going to win. In comes a Rock Wrecker at that point. They just had to hope I'd no-shield that attack, but since we shielded up, we can take the win in that game. Next matchup here, it's going to be probably one of the worst leads we could see. A Solgaleo, this Pokemon I thought was just kind of extinct from the entire Master League meta, because I think once Necrozma came in, the Steel and Psychic type Necrozma that is, it was a Pokemon that just kind of outclassed us in a lot of different ways, but I guess this Fire Spin variant is being very annoying for us right now. I know no matter what we resist these charge moves, it could be an Iron Head, it could be a Psychic Fangs, maybe a Solar Beam if they're crazy, but because we do survive that move, we can get off a second Superpower, maybe even a third if they let us reach it. Superpower number 2 is going to do just a little bit less damage, and our third one is going to do very little damage to them here, but we are whittling down a Pokemon that our Kyurem really does not want to see. In comes another Superpower, our opponent lets it go, and at this point we have done quite a bit of damage to them here. Our opponent throws a Charge Move against our Palkia, and we are just going to have to hope that whatever is in the back is not going to be the worst case scenario. In the back line, though, is the worst case scenario. It's a Reshiram, Pokemon, which our Kyurem does not want to see. Our Palkia as well, after that defense drop, is taking so much damage here. I can't stay in. I have to swap out to a Pokemon that's going to be taking a ton of super effective damage, and I don't know if we can win this game. At this point, I feel like the best way we could possibly win it is if there is going to be a Pokemon like a Landorus in the backline that we can just kind of chunk down with Ice Fang damage. Fusion Flare does draw our shield here. I'm going to go for a Fusion Flare of our own to try to get this thing out of the way or draw that final shield before any more Dragon Breath damage is going to be thrown. In comes that Fusion Flare. It does knock them out despite being incredibly resisted. Their final Pokemon is shown as a Shadow Rhyperior, and I think I can draw a shield against them. Our opponent tries to make a catch. It doesn't quite work out for them, but I think they just have a bit too much HP across the board here to win this game. In comes our Charge Move Ice Burn. Should one-shot them, but they have that shield. They're going to shield this attack up, and I don't think I'm going to reach an Aqua Tail right before they're able to go for that full farm down. Unfortunately for us here, 1 Ice Fang, not enough to knock them out. We need 1 or 2 more if I wanted any chance of winning this one, and they are at back-to-back breaking swipes. So the first one comes through, it nearly knocks us out. The next one, though, is a guaranteed KO against us without any shields remaining, and our Kyurem is unfortunately going to go down. All right, next matchup here, we're going to see our Melmetal up against a Ho-Oh. In the past, Melmetal used to be pretty good here, right? Rock Slide was the moveset of choice, but since I'm running 2 moves that Ho-Oh would love to see, I'm instead going to come in with our Palkia and see what they're going to bring in. Unfortunately for us, they have a hard answer with this Dialga, but I know I've been on the other side of this matchup as the Dialga. It's not as comfortable as you might expect, especially if I get a proper Aqua Tail bait off. In comes their Charge Move. They know how to play this matchup out. I would get to another Spatial Rend, but because I know at this point, I don't really need Switch Advantage. I just want Shield Advantage. I let that go, and now our Melmetal can come in, go for a Superpower against them in just a second here, and potentially knock them out before taking a lot of damage on our Steel-type Pokemon. Superpower coming through, our opponent likely will not shield this attack up, and now it's a Shield Advantage Kyurem against the entire world at this point. What is our opponent going to do? They are staying in, likely trying to go for a Sacred Fire. Maybe they get an attack drop on us. I'm hoping that we avoid it. It's a 50% chance they do go for Sacred Fire, and fortunately, no attack drop is going to be happened by our opponent. In comes the next move from our Kyurem. If they let this go, it's going to knock them out here. They do let it go, and now it's going to be a 2-on-1. What's their final Pokemon? It's their own Kyurem, so this game is looking like it's a very good thing for us right now. It was a bad lead, but because we still have our Melmetal in the backline, and we likely get a shield here with this Fusion Flare, we can probably win this game just by investing in our Melmetal at this point. Our opponent tried to win CMP, but they ended up losing that coin flip here, meaning now all of their energy is down the drain. Melmetal at this point only needs one superpower if it wants to win this matchup. They end up staying in, so we get to see just how much damage this is going to do. Probably not quite enough to knock out, but it will put them easily into range where either an Ice Fang or just this next double Iron Bash will be more than enough damage to finish them off. Double Iron Bash coming through, our opponent is going to get knocked out, and Melmetal able to close out that matchup. All right, next matchup, we're going to see a Melmetal up against a Landorus, probably one of the worst Pokemon we could see here, but we have a Water type in the back, we have an Ice type in the back, so I'll swap out and see what we can do. Our opponent stays in for just a second here, but then they counter swap with a Dialga, so once again, one of the best answers here to our Palkia, but because that last matchup we showed that we could get a shield advantage, there is still chance for us to win this game. In comes an Aqua Tail, our opponent is going to shield that move up here, and if they don't throw a charge move, then we can get to a spatial rend. Our opponent now is going to have to double shield, or potentially lose switch and shield advantage if they don't think I have this charge attack. Spatial rend comes through, it knocks out Dialga. We get both switch and shield advantages this game. This turned from what looked like a very bad spot to one of the best possible case scenarios. Now we can come in with our Ice Fang Kyurem, go for a ton of damage against them. They are now in double Iron Bash range, shield up a potential Stone Edge, and we should be in a much better spot than when we started out this match. In the backline, going to be a Palkia Pokemon, which is probably one of the trickier things that we could see here, but because Melmetal is going to be able to absorb a lot of these fast moves, we are going to chip them down here with our Steel-type Pokemon, and then our Kyurem should still be able to close out this game. In comes our charge moves. We're at back-to-back superpower, but I'm going to make a very bold double Iron Bash bait. Let's see if our opponent is going to call it or if they shield it up. We get a risky shield there, but thankfully for that shield, now we can no shield once again without having our defense dropped and go for back-to-back superpowers against this Pokemon. Aqua Tail does put us pretty low, but at this point I have so much energy. The first superpower has been reached. No catch is going to happen. Even if they catch our second superpower at this point, just landing that first one has put them into range where our Kyurem can easily farm them down. Second one has been thrown. I don't think a catch happened there either, which means now to swap into our Kyurem, tap our screen, and win the game. Kyurem is just so strong in these endgame scenarios. When you have switch and shield advantage, we are able to take down yet another very bad lead. Next matchup, another bad lead. As I was saying, this Pokemon is a tricky matchup for a lot of our team because obviously I don't have a lot of good charge move pressure against them without debuffing myself with Melmetal, and we have an Ice-type Pokemon in the backline, which does not want to face this Steel-type. In comes a superpower. Our opponent could shield us up if they want to keep health on their Solgaleo there or their Necrozma, and they end up counter swapping with their Palkia when I swap in my Palkia. We don't get a catch, which means they have so much energy left over on their Necrozma. This game could get a little bit tricky. They throw a move though before I get to one. I know at this point it's not going to be a spatial rend. I can no-shield the Aqua Tail, go for a spatial rend of my own, try to knock them out here, and see if we can flip switch and potentially win this game. With that said, I don't really want to flip switch this game, right? What I wanted instead was a shield advantage. They have so much energy across the board, energy on this Kyurem, energy on that Necrozma in the backline, so this game is going to be just a bit trickier than I'd like it to be. In comes a charge move. What is it going to be? Probably just a Fusion Flare. I think I can survive that, meaning that if I can get off my charge move, then there's a good chance that I can use my Kyurem as a way to just kind of sponge energy, get a shield, and then invest in our Melmetal to try to win out this endgame matchup. In comes a Fusion Flare. Our opponent is going to have a big decision to make. I think they are going to have to shield this up if they want any chance of winning. And now I could go for a superpower if I wanted to debuff my stats, but I don't think it would be quite enough to knock out from this range. In comes a charge move, just an outrage though. Luckily, no Dark Pulse on this Necrozma, meaning that we can easily tank that, go for a double Iron Bash, and see what they're going to do. They do opt to let that go, but honestly, the amount of damage that did, plus the amount of damage we're doing with the Thundershocks here, might put them into a range where the next double Iron Bash could just knock them out. At this point, I'm almost at 3 double Iron Bashes, so I can go for one here and then back-to-back once again if they do end up shielding, and we should be able to win this matchup just by going for charge move spam against this Pokemon. In comes their Kyurem. Once again, we have so much energy, I can throw another double Iron Bash. I have double Iron Bash here, so I can throw one, throw the other, and then our Kyurem could close out this endgame if this is not quite enough damage to knock out this Kyurem. In comes double Iron Bash. Yeah, they do survive. I swap. I get an Ice Fang down. That Necrozma in the backline has very little HP. They end up getting farmed down as well, and we take the win in that matchup. Another Necrozma lead, this time piloted by World Champion Kai. This is going to be a very tricky game here. Let's see what's going to happen. I know at this point that we are going to be able to go for superpowers against this to try to trip them down. One superpower is going to put them about at half HP. The second one is going to do quite a bit less here. First superpower has been thrown, and the second one is going to be thrown before our opponent throws any charge moves. At this point, I'm going to try to catch a Dark Pulse if I can on our Palkia. In comes a shield actually from our Melmetal there, which is fantastic to see, and in comes a catch here on our Palkia, but we ended up catching an outrage, nearly getting one shot by a Necrozma. Not at all what you want to see. With that said, they do farm down with their Palkia, so we do bait out a Pokemon that we don't want to see with our Kyurem, but they still have a lot of energy left over on their Necrozma. They still have this Palkia. This game is looking very tricky for us. In comes a superpower. Our opponent might not shield this up, saying they're already down one shield this game. I have back-to-back, and I think as long as this is not a spatial rend, we should survive this, get that second superpower off, and just invest in a 2-shield Kyurem to try to sweep this endgame. Superpower number 2 coming out. Our opponent is going to let this one go. I can swap out, go for an Ice Fang down, get an energy lead, and hope that we have enough HP in the backline to win against whatever it's going to be. Of course, it's a Kyurem. Who would have thought? If you don't see a Kyurem with the first two Pokemon, it's almost guaranteed that the third Pokemon is going to be a Kyurem. In comes a Charge Move, likely just a Fusion Flare here, but these Ice Fangs are tripping us down so much, and they still have energy on that Necrozma in the backline, so this game is going to be a very close call. Fusion Flare coming through, our opponent likely will have to let this go if they want any chance of winning this, because they know at this point I have back-to-back. In comes Necrozma. Are they going to be able to reach as many moves as they need to win this game? Fusion Flare does draw a shield, and I do see a win condition at this point. I can get to another Fusion Flare before the Shadow Claw down happens, and these Ice Fangs are actually doing quite a bit of damage to them. If I can Ice Fang them into a range where Metal can reach a move and knock them out, then I might still be able to win this game despite not reaching this Fusion Flare on our Kyurem. But do we have enough HP on our Metal to be able to reach a double Iron Bash? I have to hope that we do. 1, 2, 3, 4 Thundershocks is all it takes to reach a double Iron Bash. Is this enough to knock out this Necrozma? In comes double Iron Bash. The game is just building the suspense at this point. Double Iron Bash going to be thrown. It is enough to knock out Necrozma, and 1 HP victory, able to win that match. GG's to Yakai, very close one. Next game here going to be another Kyurem on the lead. Who would have thought? Master League Kyurem is just everywhere here. But because this is a Kyurem White, and since they're staying in, this is such a good matchup for us. I'm just going to stay in, throw a double Iron Bash, and see what they want to do. With that said, we all know this Pokemon has access to Fusion Flare, which while it would not one-shot me from here, it would basically knock me out. It would put me deep into the red. I'm going to shield that up and go for a double Iron Bash and try to either chip them down or draw a shield. They do opt to let that one go. I have back-to-back superpowers. Our opponent, for one reason or another, coming in with Dialga, hopefully going and no-shielding the superpower, which is exactly what ends up happening. They must have hoped at this point that I was not running this. Maybe they thought I had Rock Slide as my second move or something, but thankfully superpower here does draw a shield, and now, of all things, I can come in with our Palkia, go for a one-shield farm down, or maybe throw an Aqua Tail right before they get to a Roar of Time to either draw a shield, or maybe just knock them out here. Aqua Tail does end up getting a knockout, draining all of the energy from that Dialga, and in comes once again the Kyurem. Because Kyurem comes back in, I can outpace them to an Aqua Tail, knock them out, and we have 3 Pokemon remaining, or potentially a shield advantage if our opponent does opt to shield this move up. In comes a shield, and at this point, I get a Dragon. Oh, I thought I Dragon Breath him down, but no, Ice Fang does knock us out just a little bit beforehand. I can come in with our Kyurem here, go for a farm down against them, shield up the potential Ice Burn, and a shield advantage, energy advantage. Well, I guess I don't have a shield advantage, but just an energy lead Kyurem at this point should be in a very good spot to win this game. So here's the thing. There's a Metal in the backline, right? But we have no shields remaining on our opponent's side. We know that Metal, despite being good in this matchup, is not going to one-shot us with anything. Double Iron Bash does come through. We have a Fusion Flare ready to go. This won't one-shot, but it will put them deep into range where our own Metal could easily knock them out. In comes Metal. We're just a couple fast moves away from our next Double Iron Bash. In comes the Charge Move. They end up top lifting before we get a chance to throw it, and our Metal able to close out this backline. All right, next matchup. What are we going to see? Metal up against a Landorus. So very bad lead matchup for us here. But once again, 2 Pokemon in the backline that can deal with this. We're going to Safe Swap our Palkia and see what they're going to do. In comes a debuff. This is going to be very awkward depending on what they bring in here to try to farm us down. This Sandsear Storm is going to put us at about half HP. And because of that, their Palkia that they bring in is going to get a bit of energy. And I won't reach a second Charge Move here. So I'm just going to go straight for the Spatial Rend, try to get a shield advantage and see what they're going to do. In comes that shield. And now I can bring in our own Metal to try to drain energy. But this is not quite range where one superpower is going to knock them out, which makes this matchup just a bit more awkward than I'd like it to be. With that said, we do have a shield advantage. There's always a chance that we can win this game, but I am so worried at this point. It's just going to be like some sort of double dragon backline with either Dialga in the back, maybe their own Kyurem, and if that is the case, there's going to be a lot of fast food pressure to go for the rest of this game. This might be a tricky one to try to win. Superpower coming through. Our opponent does let it go. Not quite enough to knock out. Our opponent, fortunately for us, is going to have a Dialga. Love to see that. This Pokemon is going to be one of the worst matchups that we could possibly see here, but it's not like we didn't expect it to be double dragon this game. Fusion Flare, not quite enough to knock them out. Our opponent even shielding it up, and now Dragon Breaths are going to knock us out the longer this game is going to go on. At this point, might as well just no-shield this attack, see if we can maybe sweep this endgame matchup here with our Metal, but we're just a little bit too low on HP. We have to debuff ourselves to knock out this Dialga. Not much we could do there. But in the next game here, going to be a Kyurem Black on the lead once again, one of the most common Pokemon that we've seen on the lead today. We've seen that one double Iron Bash plus one superpower is not quite enough here to knock them out. In comes a Fusion Bolt. It's going to do a catastrophic amount of damage, but we're able to survive this, go for a double superpower against them. We've seen, because the combination of double Iron Bash plus superpower isn't enough, I'm going to see just how much damage does double superpower do, but unfortunately for us, our opponent actually ends up shielding this time, meaning that even though we're trying something new, we're not actually going to see if it ends up working out. The next superpower does still do quite a bit of damage. We stay swap with our Palkia, and of all things, we see a Tapu Lele try to counter swap against our Dragon-type Pokemon. While they are a fairy and they do resist our fast moves, Aqua Tail is a pretty powerful move, and this is a very squishy Pokemon. 2 Aqua Tails should be enough to knock them out. With that said, I also know Nature's Madness will one-shot us basically from this point, so if I shield this up, I can overfarm. They're using Astonish as their fast move, so while it is a high-hitting, high-damaging, rather, fast move, that is, I can still survive the damage after this defense drop, go for another Aqua Tail, and try to knock them out with that charge move. They actually let that go, meaning we have one switch advantage, and we end up seeing a Meloetta in the backline. You have a Spatial Rend ready to go. If they end up letting this move through, it's going to do a massive amount of damage. If they shield this up, then our Kyurem should be in a very good spot. Since they do let that attack go, I can come in with our Melmetal, try to survive whatever they're going to throw here. I think a Psy Shock is not enough to knock us out, and we might be able to reach another charge move against whatever they're going to have. They don't try to catch the move or anything. They're going to let this Meloetta either go down, or potentially they're going to shield this move up and farm us all the way down. And actually, they do survive the attack just barely, but in comes our own Kyurem. At this point, they are so low on health with every single Pokemon in this game. I think I can just come in, Dragon Breath, and Ice Fang everything down. Shield up this move, it's likely going to be a free shock here, so I can shield this up, farm down, and then Meloetta is not going to be able to farm us down with how little HP they have. Their opponent realizing that, they end up top lefting, and we can take the win in that match. Next game here, the Florges in the lead. We've seen this lead earlier today, one of the best possible Pokemon we could see. Our backline doesn't want anything to do with Fairy-type Pokemon. We have a superpower ready to go, and our opponent likely will let this go. Since we don't have a hard answer to Palkia, going for this chip and dip is always the play that I've found here. Go and try to do a one shield farm down after landing that superpower, and we can have a lot of energy to go. Even though it's only going to go into that Florges, it's still going to do quite a bit to them and chip them down into a range where even Ice Fangs could deal with them later on. Down goes their Palkia, our opponent likely bringing in that Florges, which does come back in here. We have 2 Aqua Tails we can throw against them, and despite the fact they can go for Trailblaze, ramp up their attack stat, if they do end up doing that, I still have my Melmetal that can absorb all of the damage that they're going to throw. In comes Aqua Tail number 2. Our opponent likely will not shield this up, but they could, I guess, if they want to preserve a bit of HP on this Pokemon. Aqua Tail does end up landing, and now our opponent is going to throw a charge move just a little bit sooner than they had to. Because they didn't overfarm too much energy here, I can just go in with our Melmetal and see what they're going to do. That triple is actually not even enough to knock us out, but because they are going to have to go into my Melmetal, I would assume to see an instant swap out, which means that our Kyurem in the backline should hopefully have a decent matchup. We're going to see actually a Shadow Rhyperior Pokemon, which is so scary to see, but because we have Ice Fang, which is doing so much damage to them, all I need to do is shield up this charge move and try our best here to farm them all the way down. Rockcracker would have basically one-shot us there. It probably does just straight up one-shot from full HP. Our opponent, though, because I shielded that move up, ends up top lefting, and we're able to win that game. We get a nice 3-2 set there to end off the day, but the 3 sets before this were 3-4-1 sets with this team. I ended up climbing over 100 points, basically 150 points with this team. So if you want a good Kyurem White team to use in the Go Badly, give this one a go. Melmetal was actually really good for us to use here, and the Double Dragon backline was just a very strong duo. Palkia baiting out a lot of the counters that Kyurem didn't want to see, and Melmetal just being such a massive core breaker. All right, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed the battles and you want to see more content like this in the future, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you again, though, for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.